Oh, howdy all, grab yourselves a beer. It is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Today, I'm going to be going through a guide for getting to 24 challenges in the Delirium League. Now, I'm going to assume that you're already able to get 12 by yourself, and if there's any of the, what I feel are the easiest 13 challenges that you feel you need a little bit of clarification on, you can always click the link to jump to the 12 challenge video that I posted a few days ago. That discusses those in detail. So I'm only going to look at the ones that I feel are the next step. So basically I've picked out 15 challenges that I think are the clear 14th through 28th easiest ones. And from those you'll be able to then get yourself to 24 by doing all of these minus 4 of your choice. So the first one that I want to raise is defeat Delirium Monsters. Now this just requires a bunch of mapping inside Delirium zones. There's nothing complex to it. You can do it in lower difficulty maps if you want, so you can do it, say, even in tier 1 white maps if you need to, but in practice you'll get this through normal gameplay. However, the reason it's not in the first video is that it typically takes maybe 50, maybe 70 maps to get all of these done. And also, Deliriums can be very difficult when you first get to maps. So you might find that if your first 50 maps or so, you're not even attempting the Delirium Encounters. And then after that, once you feel that you can beat them, then you'll start quickly racking up credit for this. This will be probably your, this could be your 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th or so challenge, and you'll get it through natural gameplay without going out of your way. Next up is Complete Encounters 3. This is a number of hard modes of bosses. And essentially this is about standing in or avoiding certain attacks. So let's go through them all. Defeat Lord of the Grey in the Belfry map, so that's Act 5 Kitava, without being affected by Devouring Darkness. Devouring Darkness is the damage over time shit that the Lord of the Grey puts on the ground. The easiest way to do this is through brute force and just going in there and killing the Belfry boss as quickly as possible. What you want to do for this is, when your character is super powerful, just pick up a tier 3 Belfry map, scour off all the mods on it, and run straight through to the boss. You want to try and kill the boss in as few attacks as possible, and ideally from range. A character that'd be really good for this is something like a Trickster Ignite Fireball, that you can then just throw an attack at the boss, then focus on dodging everything on the ground. However, Map Kitava has very few hit points, so it's a pretty easy encounter. The key focus is on not touching the black damage over time areas on the ground, because that's Devouring Darkness. Second up is the Brittle Emperor in Wasteland map while standing in consecrated ground. Again, this should be done on a minimum possible tier Wasteland map, which is, I believe, tier 3. And you can do it scoured. What you want to do is engage the boss, get a bit of a sense as to how much damage you're doing. Keep tabs on when he's getting low in health, which for powerful characters may actually be straight away. Like when he's at 100% life, he may be in range of dying immediately. Then what you want to do is dodge his attacks for long enough that he uses one of his overhead slams. These are the massive attacks that the Brittle Emperor does. This is the same as Vaal from Act 4. Massive overhead slam that will leave a pile of shit on the ground. That's a consecrated ground. That heals him when he's in it. He heals a couple of % of his life a second. So normally, if you're struggling with the encounter, you would want to move the boss away from it. Instead, you want to go and stand in it, and then burst down the boss as quickly as possible. Once more, easiest done in a scoured white tier map. Nightmare's Omen in Primordial Pool. So Nightmare's Omen is Malachi, but only the first half of Malachi. So core map is where you fight all of Malachi, or well, you fight the bottom half, the one that's in the black core. The first half is the upstairs part of the fight, and Piety's not involved. He doesn't have any sort of shield providing him immunity at various times. It's just the upper half of Malachi. What you want to do here is the blood projectiles are the like the bleed inflicting projectiles that he fires. You've just got to run circles and be very careful to avoid taking damage for as long as possible. So you want to be running in circles around him. Dodge the projectiles. That takes a little bit of care, but it's not overly difficult. And then once you've done that for long enough that he's submerged twice to use his slam, then at that point you want to burst him down as quickly as possible. Again, this is easiest to do on a very powerful character, so do this really late in the league, once your character's super powerful, and do it on a scoured low tier primordial pool map. From memory, primordial pools are tier 6 at the lowest, although I could be wrong there. He of Many Pieces in the museum map is a little bit different. With the previous ones, you wanted to do it on a scoured map. With this, what I suggest you do is roll a magic map that has the affix twinned on it. By having twinned, there'll be more He of Many Pieces around dropping Chaos Bombs. The Chaos Bombs are pretty obvious. This is just a timed kill when a lot of the purple projectiles are on the ground. It's just much easier to do it when there's 2 copies of this Malagaro fight. So when you do that, you'll have Complete Encounters 3 done. I actually got that by chance just because the first museum map that I rolled had twinned on it, and so it was basically a freebie for me. The other 3 will just be a matter of me going back and doing them. Next up is Delirium Encounters 2. So here, you need to apply a Delirium Orb to a map, which will be a prerequisite to doing the other 2. Secondly, you'll need to complete a rare map that's affected by a Delirium Orb, and then complete a rare map with maximum Delirium. Essentially what this is asking you to do is to take a nice, easy 2-mod rare tier 1 map. You can generate a 2-mod map. They won't drop for you naturally, but using a Transmutation Orb and a Regal Orb, you get a 2 or 3 mod map. This can be one that has really trivial mods on it. Then you want to throw 5 of the not very impressive Delirium Orbs on it. So Delirium Orbs are these little things, Cartographer's Delirium Orb being one of the medium price ones. The Scarab ones at the more expensive end. The weapon and armor ones are at the cheaper end. You want to take 5 of those and apply them to a rare map. If you do that, and then you're able to complete that map, just be warned, even a tier 1 map will be genuinely difficult with maximum Delirium. If you're able to beat that map, then you'll get full credit for this entire challenge. Essentially here, the key to this is the combat encounter difficulty. I feel that you should not attempt this one until you're able to smoothly complete rare tier 16 maps. Once you're able to do that, once you're finding that you're going through tier 16 maps, getting them done in a reasonable time frame, then you will be capable of beating a tier 1 2-mod rare map that has maximum Delirium. It really does amp up the difficulty of the monsters considerably. Lastly, if you're able to take on much more difficult maps, you can do it on a higher tier than tier 1. There's nothing preventing you from doing so, just that tier 1 is going to make it easier for you if you're having trouble. Next up we have Use Betrayal Benches. This is one that kind of requires a full explanation of the Jun's betrayal system. Now, I haven't got a betrayal guide up at the moment. There are several of them on the internet. They're not hard to find. But essentially what you're wanting to do here is manipulate members of the syndicate to get people into various sections that you want them in. So you'll see here that I've got It That Fled in Research, which is who you want to have in Research normally. I haven't been focusing on Jun's missions much this league, actually. Now, each of the various bosses has a specific effect that they grant when you get them into each of the different wings. So, for instance, Hillock in Transportation will give you a special crafting bench that will raise the quality of a weapon to 24, 26, or 28%, depending upon the tier that you've got Hillock in. Sorry, the number of stars that he's got. So you see he's a 2-star general at the moment, so he'd give a 26 quality bench. Vagan drops a whole bunch of splinters in Transportation. You don't actually want him there normally, you want him in Intervention, but it's just where he is at the moment. The ones that you want to get for this, to add a veiled modifier to an item, you need aisling. Now, if you're not familiar with that name, it will look like Ailing, A-I-L-S-I-N-G, I think, or something, but it's actually pronounced aisling. She needs to be in the Research wing. Then you don't need to have her at any particular tier. Tier 1 is fine. Then you need to go to the safe house. So you need to progress enough through the betrayal content to get a safe house for Research, while aisling is in Research Division. When you do that, you'll get access to a special crafting bench that will allow you to do this. Quality to a map item. For quality to a map, here you need the one that I always need to look up where these will come from. It is Hillock in Intervention. So Intervention doesn't usually modify items. Hillock is a bit of an exception. He does quality there. This will let you quality a map, so over the normal limit to 35%. If you're wondering what to do this on, what I suggest that you do it on is take a Shaper Guardian map. So Lair of the Hydra or any of those maps, and 35 quality that. The reason for that is that there's another challenge that will come up in the 36 36 challenge guide to kill a maximum Delirium Shaper Guardian. And what you can do is you can put 5 of the very, very, very best Delirium orbs on your Shaper Guardian map, and then you can use a Fractured Fossil to copy it. This lets you create a whole bunch of copies that will retain the 5 Delirium status. At least I believe they do. I do need to verify that personally. And they'll also retain the 35 quality. So that's the best use for it. But you can just feel free to waste it. It's not anything all that special. Upgrade to Breachstone. This requires It That Fled in Research. If you want to get good value out of it, you want him to be a 3-star general. But if you just get him to 1 or 2, then raise one of the elemental Breachstones into a charged or enriched Breachstone. You'll actually lose currency doing that sometimes, depending on the economy at the time, but it's worth it just to get your challenge credit. To convert an amulet into a talisman, you will need Jorgin in Research. There are 2 ways you can do this. You can either do this with a view to profitable resale, in which case you will want to carefully craft an amulet that is not influenced. Then you'll want to put a valuable anointment on it, or at least a useful anointment. Diamond skin at the cheap end, but you can spend a lot more on more powerful ones if you want. And then you'll want to get Jorgin to a carefully chosen level, usually 3 stars, but sometimes 2 depending on the amulet you've got, and then feed that amulet to Jorgin. Alternately, you can just waste this bench, just pick up an amulet off the ground and throw it into Jorgin's bench. Add experience to a gem. This requires Tora in Research. If you get her to 3 stars, she'll give you half a level on an Awakened gem. If you get her to 1 or 2 stars instead, she'll give you a pretty trivial amount of XP. Transform colour of at least 1 socket to white. This requires Vorici in Research. Next up we have complete Twinned Maps. Here you need to pick 12 tiers and run twinned maps of those tiers. You'll get this through natural gameplay for the map tiers that you're actually grinding. You'll see here that I've got it for I've got it for all the higher tiers and some of the lower tiers. Generally speaking, you'll need to just grab your tiers, just pick, in my case I need to pick 3 of them. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 low tiers through natural gameplay. I'm then just going to have to go and grab a bunch of alchemy orbs and go through my tier 1 maps and just start alching random maps until one of them's twinned. Then once that's done, I'll do the same with 2, I'll do the same with 5. That's all you need to do, really simple. Lastly, there is a little trick that if you're going for 36 you can use. For 36 there is a challenge to kill 500 map bosses whilst under the effect of Delirium Fog. In the event that you're wanting to do that, what you should be doing is taking tier 3 Vaal Pyramid maps. With that Vaal Pyramid map, you'll then roll them twinned, and then you will be applying 1 Delirium Orb to them. That's the easiest way. That'll get you 6 map bosses that you can kill whilst you are under the effects of Delirium. That is something that you can do in order to progress both this challenge, because you can do Vaal Pyramid at various tiers, so not just tier 3, but it exists at higher tiers as well. And you can also at the same time be getting credit for a later challenge. But you can skip that challenge if you're not going for 36. Next up we have complete Delirium Encounters 3. Most people report that Vengeful Pack is the rare one here. All you need to do here is just keep running Delirium content. You will get this in time. Vengeful Pack is the rare one, I believe, but it's not staggeringly rare. You do need to find every single one of them, but it's not like you'll be stuck with one of them missing for ages and ages and ages. So this one feels pretty reasonable. In my experience, I think I got it about 150 maps in, and this seems to be experience that's matched by most other players. Last thing I will say on this is that if you were very early to endgame play in Delirium League, Vengeful Pack was rarer then. It seems to be more common now than it was early in the league. Next up we have complete unidentified maps. The way that you're going to source unidentified rare maps, and these need to be rare, is that when you have a map that has mods that you can beat on it. So let's take for instance this shipyard map. Okay, they're mods I can beat. Let's just regal that and demonstrate this process. So I'm going to throw a regal on this and make sure that it still maps mods that I can beat, and it is. You'll see here taunted, can't be taunted, armor reduction, and bloodlines. I'm going to throw a Vaal orb on this. There's a 1 in 4 chance it will go unID. If it does, it will keep the mods it's got. And that's exactly what happened. So that's why I already have this done for tiers 14, 15, and 16, because I frequently use Vaal orbs on them. It will still have the mods that it had before, so it'll be nice and easy. 13, 9, and the lower tiers, I'm just going to need to alch and then Vaal random maps of those tiers, making sure after I alch them that I can beat the mods. If you're playing a build that can beat all mods, this is pretty common amongst chaos damage builds, and also some people invest in reflect damage mitigation. So if you are playing a build that can beat every single map mod in the game, then in that case, you can do this another way. And the way you'll do that then is, in order to source a tier 2 rare map, you can take 3 tier 1 maps that are the same base. So let's demonstrate this. Let's go to Pier. I'm just going to take 3 of these that are white maps, and just because I'm feeling lucky, and then I'm going to alch all 3 of them. I don't really care what the mods are. That's got reflect elemental damage. I probably couldn't beat that, but it doesn't matter because I'm just going to vendor them all. And I receive an unidentified tier 2 map. That'll be rare, and then if I wanted to, I could go and run that. You can do that at all tiers, and so that can help you source the maps if you don't want to use a whole bunch of Vaal orbs on it. Next up, we have Complete Encounters 4. Strongboxes you will get through natural gameplay, and you'll get it quickly. Abysses. Abysses appear in 10% of maps. If you don't force abysses onto your map, then you will take 500 maps on average to get this one done. Alternately, you can force abysses onto maps with Zana mods, so that can speed up your progress here. Interacting with shrines. Again, you'll get this through natural gameplay eventually, but you can speed it up by using the domination mod to force 3 additional shrines onto a map. Perandus chest is the harder one. Now, this is the one that will take you some time to get through natural gameplay. In fact, you won't get it through natural gameplay. You'll have to go out of your way. Your first option is to force Perandus onto your maps by using Zana's map device to do so. Your second one, and I expect most of you will mix and match on this, is to use Perandus scarabs. Perandus scarabs will drop quite a bit from various Delirium content. When I say quite a bit, they're still rare, but they will cause a few Perandus monsters to appear in the zone. It's important to note that in order to get the Zana mod, you do need to have completed a good deal of the Atlas of Worlds. From memory, your bonus objectives need to be 120 for that to spawn, for that to be an option. But if you're not there, then Zana will tell you how many more you need to get to in order to unlock it. Next up, we have complete Metamorph Encounters. Now, Metamorph was, of course, the last league, and so this is just a bit of a reminder as to what the content of last league was. Defeat a Metamorph just simply means you need to kill one of the amalgam bosses that you can create by interacting with Tane. You'll just need to kill most of the monsters in the zone, and then you'll be able to do that. Open a map with a Metamorph Scarab. You will definitely be getting Scarabs dropping through the Delirium content. They're rare, but when you get them, you'll get them in quantity, and you will find that some of the random Scarabs you get that way will include the Metamorph ones. Obtain an itemized sample from a Metamorph. I discussed this, the way this works a little bit in the first video, but essentially, if you're in tier 5 and higher maps, you'll have a reasonable chance that there'll be enough monsters in the zone and that they will be high enough level that you'll be able to create an itemized sample. This means that you will need to fight a boss monster, a Metamorph monster that includes the map boss. If there's multiple map bosses, it needs to include at least one of them. You'll then get a piece of that map boss when you kill it, assuming that the other monsters that you fed into the device were high enough for rarity. In tier 16 maps, you can get by with just the map boss, 3 white monsters and 1 magic from memory, whereas in, say, a tier 5 map, you'll need to have the map boss and perhaps 3 rare monsters and one white, or 2 rare and 2 magic. In lower tier maps, you can get there, but usually, so for instance, in tier 1 maps, usually you will need 2 map bosses in order to get the bar to fill. Defeat a Metamorph in Tane's laboratory. You just need to talk to Tane in your hideout and go to his lab and put in an eye, a brain, a lung, a heart, and a liver into his device there and fight the amalgam, which will be an amalgam of 5 bosses, rather than an amalgam of a boss and 4 trash mobs. And once you do that, bingo, you've got your credit. This one's something that you'll want to do because Metamorphs are real loot pinatas. Next up we have a bit of a luck-based one. Obtain rewards from Vaal Side Areas. I've included this because the randomness on it is mitigated somewhat by you only needing 7 of 9 objectives. You'll also know before you go into a Vaal Side area whether or not it has any potential to help you get progress here. So what you will find is that Vaal Side Areas will appear in 10% of maps, and they will have 4 to 6 mods. Those 4 to 6 mods that they have will mostly be drawn from the normal map mod pool, but there's also a number of somewhat rare map mods that are just pure reward. One example would be of Atsuatl, which will add 1 to 3 rare items with incursion mods to the Vaal vessel. That one's actually rubbish because they'll drop corrupted, and incursion items are ones you don't want to be corrupted. You want to craft them further. But anyways, the rewards from that one will be disappointing, but you still want it for the challenge. Of these, level gems are rare, unique with 2 implicits is rare, and the fossil is uncommon. The rest are all somewhat common. You need to get one of the 3 rarest ones, so the fossil, the 2 implicit corrupted, and the level gem. This will be not particularly onerous. You should have it by 30 or 40 Vaal Side Areas, I would expect, which is 300 or 400 maps. Complete encounters while in Mist. Here you'll need to kill an incursion architect, a betrayal target, a blight boss, and a metamorph boss whilst in Delirium Mist. The easiest way to do this by far is to run maps that have Delirium orbs applied to them, and specifically to run maps that have exactly 1 Delirium orb applied to them. And depending how powerful your character is, you might be able to do this on quite high tier maps. I find that I can get through tier 14 maps with tier 14 to 16 maps with 1 Delirium orb at an adequate pace. An incursion architect is added to your map by Elva by putting one of her missions on the map. A betrayal target is added by putting Jun on the map. A blight boss is added. This one's a little bit tricky. For blights, you can get a blight onto your map by a couple of ways. The first way is by using the Zana mod. This requires you to have done a massive amount of the Atlas of Worlds. 140 map completion from memory is required to enable that option. Once you've done that though, adding a blight encounter onto a Delirium Orb map is actually a pretty good return on currency, even though it's expensive. And once you've done the map, you'll be able to then take out the blight, and hopefully you'll get a boss. No guarantee that you'll get it first try, however. Lastly, there's defeating a Metamorph boss. The only way to force Metamorph encounters onto a map is by use of Metamorph scarabs, and you will get them in enough quantity. You only need to do 1, so you'll need to find 1 Metamorph scarab at some point in your playthrough, and you'll then be able to use that on a map that has a single Delirium Orb on it in order to achieve this challenge. Next up we have Reach level 90. I've got to say, this is going to be one that will be one of the easiest in going from 12 to 24, even if you haven't got it before you get to 12 challenges. I got this as my 13th challenge in this league, and I think that seems to be pretty typical from other players. Next up we have a harder boss hard mode version. So first up we have defeat Vahesh Shimmering Aberration in Terrace map. So that's Yugul, that's the map version of Yugul, without becoming fearful. So what fearful means is that any source of cold damage over time in that fight makes you fearful. There are 2 of these. There is Yugul's charge up vomit attack that he does in front of him, and that will make you fearful and deal cold damage over time. And more noticeable, there's the cold orbs that sort of follow you around the arena. The trick to this is again to do as much damage to Yugul as quickly as possible while focusing on dodging everything. The easiest way to do this is to be playing a ranged character. In fact, I would hesitate to if you're playing a melee character, I would suggest trying to find some alternate way of doing this encounter. One cheesy way that I would suggest is to drop a town portal outside the Yugul room and go in there with Vaal Double Strike already charged up. Release the boys with Vaal Double Strike. Then, as soon as you phase Yugul, then at that point you want to deal with the Yugul clones that pop up, and then you want to Alt F4 out of the game. Then, or at least log out to the character select screen. Go back into the map. So go to your hideout and then go back into the map. Charge up your Vaal Double Strike again by killing monsters earlier in the terrace map. Then re-enter the boss fight and repeat the same process. So get Yugul from 2/3 life down to 1/3 life, and then kill all of the clones of him that spawn whilst staying away from the balls on the ground. At this point, again, Alt F4 out, and then come back in and repeat the process. This is a really clunky way of doing it, and it is better to do this with a ranged character capable of doing burst damage. That's the easiest way to do this. It's not an easy encounter either. If you're in a trade league, you can always pay someone else to do it for you. Defeat Enticer of Rot in the Spider Forest within 5 seconds of Avatar of Rot's death. So here you have Alira and her pet zombie. You need to kill the two of them within 5 seconds of each other. Again, overwhelming damage is the easiest way to do this. If overwhelming damage isn't an option, then you want to burn Alira down to fairly low life, then kill the zombie, then kill Alira. You'll need to have all of your burst damage flasks and the like available for the final burn phase on Alira, and you can also use an attack with Culling Strike. To defeat Lady Stormflay in a ghetto map while you're affected by vulnerability is the easiest way to do this is to use transmutation orbs and alteration orbs to roll a ghetto map to have players are cursed with vulnerability. These curses only appear on yellow and red maps, but from memory, ghetto is a red map only in this league. For Piety the Empyrean in Shrine map while you're affected by Piety's Rage. To get Piety's Rage, you need to be hit by her while she is in her fire form. And it doesn't last for very long either. So what you need to do here, this is one for Culling Strike. Here, even if you don't normally use Culling Strike on your character at all, you're going to want to make an exception here. What you're going to want to do is pick a green support gem that you use and replace it with Culling Strike when Piety gets low on health. Then, you want to just basically engage her in combat, dodge her attacks until she turns into fire form. Then go close to her, let her hit you, and once she's hit you, then counterattack her with whatever you've got Culling Strike on. I actually got this just by dumb luck. Piety was at fairly low life, and I was just beating away at her. She went into fire form, and I didn't actually realise at the time I was going to get credit, and that was how I learnt what Piety's Rage is. It is her fire. It is an after effect of you taking fire damage from her. Next up, we have Curious Corruption. This is interesting. There are 15 outcomes that are possible that are discussed here. Of these, 3 of them are very, very, very rare. However, you only need to get 12 of them. So for that reason, it's actually a very easy challenge. Doesn't look it. What you're going to need to do is use a Vaal Orb to get a corrupted implicit modifier on an item. 1 in 4 chance when you just use it on a rare item. Turn a unique into a rare. 1 in 4 chance again just by using a Vaal Orb. To add a white socket, 1 in 4 chance when you use a Vaal Orb. We're going to skip the 6-linked item because that is legitimately rare. Additional gem level. This is a 1 in 8 chance when you use a Vaal Orb on a gem. You can just waste Vaal Orbs on level 1 skill gems if you want. Additional gem quality. Again, 1 in 8 chance when used on a gem. And you can also do this on level 1 gems. Vaal skill gem. 1 in 4 chance if you are Vaaling a skill gem that can go into a Vaal version. So for instance, you can just buy level 1 Cyclone gems off a vendor and just Vaal them, and then when you finally get a Vaal Cyclone, you can just vendor that too, because Vaal Cyclone is terrible. To turn a map into an 8 mod rare is a 1 in 4 chance when you're Vaaling a map. That will happen by itself. Additional map tier is a 1 in 8 chance when you are Vaaling a map. That'll happen by itself. An unidentified map. 1 in 4 chance when you're Vaaling a rare or magic map. You should generally be Vaaling maps once you get to red maps. You'll probably be doing this a lot anyway, so you'll get this by chance. Vaal Temple map. This is one that requires a little bit of knowledge. All it is just when you Vaal a tier 15 map, it has a good chance of turning into a tier 16 Vaal Temple. These maps are really common this league. Vaal Temple is a pain in the ass to run. It actually has the hardest map boss on the entire atlas, but it's something that you're probably going to want to do exactly once in your league, and that is after you have got your awakening level up to 8. On the flip side, you can actually go and target farm the Vaal Temple map if you want, and particularly in a trade league where the prophecy for the Queen's Sacrifice, there's a divination card that gives you the Queen's Sacrifice prophecy, and that is quite valuable. That's the Beauty Through Death prophecy divination card. That's used in upgrading Atziri's Mirror to Atziri's Reflection, which is the best energy shield chest in the game. Lastly, we have 30% quality. Now, a lot of people think this is an RNG output. In some way it is. If you run a lot of Ironheart's missions, you will get the beast that's required for this. Then it's just a matter of going to the Menagerie and corrupting an item there. So the 3 you're going to be skipping are 2 Implicit Corruption, Influenced Rare, and 6 Linked Item. You might get one of them through dumb luck. If you get the Corruption Chamber to tier 3, then you'll have a good chance of getting either the 2nd or 3rd outcome. And 6 Linked Item is a 1 in 144 chance when you Vaal a piece of armor or a piece of a two-handed weapon. Lastly, so the 28th and last challenge I'm going to discuss is complete unique maps. This is a matter of picking 14. So there's a few of these that are particularly difficult for various reasons. The first one is Doryani's Machinarium is expensive. It is a drop that is unique to a specific boss in the Delve Mines, and it's not even a particularly common reward from that boss. Doryani's Machinarium is really expensive in trade leagues, and if you're playing solo self-found, there's a very good chance you will just simply not find it. However, if you get it, the rewards are definitely there. Definitely consider, if you're in a trade league, even if you're capable of beating this, definitely consider selling it to someone else because it's worth so damn much. Perandus Manor is rare as well. I actually had my first one ever drop this league, but I didn't end up running it. I ended up selling it because I was quite broke in the league at the time. It's not as expensive as it's been historically, and it's certainly very reasonable to do. However, if you're playing solo self-found, don't count on ever finding this. Hall of the Grandmasters. Hall of the Grandmasters is not all that rare. However, it is ridiculously difficult, and it generally requires a character that is set up specifically to defeat this map. It has a bunch of monsters in it that are basically, they're copies of other players that were submitted at various top points in the history of the game. Some of them are really, really devastatingly powerful. Hall of the Grandmasters has a number of mechanics, such as monsters that have capped block that can be really difficult to deal with through normal gameplay. There are certainly characters that build themselves up solely to be able to beat this map, because it is quite lucrative. It drops one of the divination cards for the Mirror of Kalandra, so for that reason it is pretty popular to run for a minority of people who have the experience to do so. Lastly, if you're in hardcore, don't even try it. So those are the 3 worst maps to get your hands on, and the Vinktar Square is pretty ugly as well. To get the Vinktar Square, you need to sell a set of each of the 4 Agorod rare staves, and the higher the item levels of those staves, the higher the tier of the Vinktar Square. It's a pretty rare map as a result, and so that's going to be the 4th one you're going to cut. Other than that, it's just a matter of finding all the others and running them. I've not done Death and Taxes yet. That is not because the map is particularly rare or particularly difficult. It's just because I haven't got around to it. And that's it. Hopefully that's enough to get you to 28 challenges, so quite a bit past 24. So you can pick 4 of these that you don't feel like doing and you can drop them. If you've got any comments or questions, definitely fire away below. Certainly some of these are harder than others, and I feel that the hardest of these is definitely complete these encounters 5. So don't be afraid to skip over that one if you need to. Varhesh is not an easy fight, and skipping over the hard mode of Varhesh will be something that a lot of people will find easier. But of course, you might want to skip one of the others just because of what you've ended up getting your hands on, especially in solo self-found. So yeah, leave your comments and questions below. Otherwise, I will be putting up the video for 36 reasonably soon.